Hello, everybody. Today we're going to continue our discussion of probability in real life for real world by going over that one example that I presented in the intro about accidents, right? So you're sitting there and all of a sudden you realize what is the probability? What are the chances that I'm going to have an accident, a fatal accident, let's say today? What is the probability of that happening? So that's what we're going to talk about today, and we're going to show you how to do a real-world data pool and be able to find out what is the probability of having a fatal accident if I'm commuting or if I'm doing something going to the store. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So the first thing that you want to do is answer a question. So that question can be any of a number of ways to formulate that question. But you have to, you have to look at the data that will help you in your quest in order to answer the question. But you have to have that question first. So that's probably the most important thing that a data analyst can do, and specifically when you're talking about probability. So that's what we're going to do first. We're going to talk about the question itself. What is it that we want to answer? Then, once we're done with that question, then we want to say, where do we look for data? Well, anything having to do with traffic accidents, anything that can be, the US federal government has a great data repository at www.data.gov. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you the main screen of this website at www.data.gov. And then I place the search terms to obtain any data that I might need in order to answer the question about accidents. So this is what the data.gov website looks like, what they call the splash screen, whenever you come in. And I put in, you notice I put in the search area, traffic accidents by US state. Again, I'm trying to figure out what that question is that I'm trying to answer, right? So right now the question is basically, what's my chance of having a traffic accident, period. So I figured I'd do that as my first place to go. Now what'll happen is that when you do that, that search term will now come up and it will show you every place that you can take a look to see about traffic accidents. And you can see here that what happens is that it comes up with basically the Bureau of Transportation. And what will happen is this is the National Transportation Safety Board and Bureau of Transportation Statistics. And this is what you have. So I came up with motor vehicle fatal crashes by day of week, time of day, and weather and light conditions. That's what I finally landed on. And you can see that this is it looks like a good one for me at this point. So I'm going to take a look and see what that data can show me. So I reviewed the data that I had, and we'll actually go into the spreadsheet and we'll take a look at that. And I thought that, well, the probability that I have, the question I have concerning the probability was really too general. In fact, it was way too general. So I refined it. And you can do this before you start delving deeply into the data. So I came up with, instead of what's the probability that I'll have an accident today, a traffic accident, what's the probability I'll have a fatal traffic accident, right? If I drive at 8 a.m. in the morning on a Monday. So I went ahead and said, okay, now this will get me out of that very general area and be able to get into a very specific probability. This is the website that you can go to get the same data that we are going to take a look at, we're going to review whenever we get to that step. So this is the website that you want to go to. So you can actually, once this slide is done, you can pause this and you can actually copy this down and you can go to this area. Now this is the Bureau of Transportation Statistics. So that's what they do. Is literally do transportation statistics. And then you can just take a look, and that's the data set is a big long data set, but and make sure those dashes are in between each word. And then once you have that, then you can go to the data set and you can take a look at that. So that finishes off the idea of the question and then getting data to try to answer that question. The next section is actually a computer demo that takes that spreadsheet and shows you what the spreadsheet contains, a little bit about it, and then about how easy or how hard it is to be able to translate that data into a workable probability. So that's what we're going to do next, and that's going to take up about another 3 minutes, 4 minutes of this entire section. But once we're done with that, then we can figure out exactly how we're going to use the data to be able to figure out the probability of having a fatal accident if you drive on a Monday at 8 a.m. So this is the spreadsheet itself. And you can see it looks, it's kind of like, wow, Chris, this is just a really small spreadsheet. Well, actually, I froze the frames. The frames are frozen there. So what will happen is that you'll see all of the different columns. But I just did it for 2019. But this is actually and if you take a look at the screen up at the top, it shows you what this represents. But basically, it's table 2-28, motor vehicle crashes by day of week. Not just day of week and time, but it also includes things like weather and light, dawn, dusk, that type of thing. So we're only going to take day of week and hour of the day, and to be able to figure out exactly what we want to do from the standpoint of being able to use this to help us determine what is the probability of us having a fatal crash on a Monday at 8 a.m. So and the nice thing about it is this is all in percentages. So the probability is already there. The probability is already there. It's right there in front of you. You don't have to do any type of transposition or any type of calculations or anything else. And if you want to check it for any other year, you could check it for any other year. But then, it gives you the total fatal crashes and then the percentage. So it's really nice that they were able to do that. And if you take a look at the highlighted areas, so the day of week is Monday, that's highlighted, and 2019 is 13.1%. So 13.1% of the accidents occurred on a Monday. 13.1% of the accidents occurred on a Monday. And from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., there was 10.1%. So you have your two percentages that you need. You have the Monday and you have the morning. Now, what I want to show you here is I want to show you the source, because I think this is very important, and you need to cite your sources. So this is basically my citation for the source, and this is where it comes from. The U.S. Department of Transportation, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, National Center for Statistics and Analysis, and then that's what you have right there. So this is where it is, Fatality Analysis Reporting System. And that's where you get your data tables, all the other things that you need to have. So also read the note. The atmospheric conditions, because that's important, but it's only for 2009. So this is a good, solid way to be able to come up with a very general probability, but a probability nonetheless, to help you make a decision. How's it going to be if I go Monday at 8 o'clock in the morning? What's my chances of having a fatal accident at that point in time? And I think once you get through the sources and you go through this data, you'll understand it better. And I think that once you understand the data, then you'll be able to use it in a more cogent fashion, and you'll be able to take it and use it to make a decision. So I think this is pretty important from that standpoint. And I'm using Excel here, which is fine, but that's what I'm using to be able to do this. But you can use whatever you want. And later on in some of the other sessions, I'll show you how to use this in something like KNIME, KNIME, or OpenOffice, or R. All these different areas to be able to make that work for you. So I'm just going to let you go ahead and take a look at this a little bit longer and make sure that you understand how this all works. And just remember that when you freeze things, you go up to the view up there, and you can see the freeze panes. So to unfreeze it, you just unfreeze it. You'll just unfreeze the pane, and it'll unfreeze it all. But in this case, what I did was I froze the columns. So I froze the first column, which was A, and then what that does is that keeps it nice and steady so that the rest of the data goes through it. Makes it a heck of a lot easier to be able to see it and to be able to use the application. Okay. So just remember that 13.1 Monday, 10.1 at 8 a.m. And I'll try to get this. Let me see if I can get this so that they both show on the same screen. There it is. So Monday, 13.1. And then 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., where 8 a.m. is located, is 10.1. So you have 13.1% on Monday, 10.1% at 8 a.m. But how do you take both of these and combine them and make them, now you make them part of the entire probability? Well, basically, and I'll explain this to you in the next session, but just to give you a preliminary, is you're going to multiply these things together. You're going to multiply the 13.1% and the 10.1% together, because you're saying not Monday or at 8 a.m., because that's what we did before, right? We had the ors. We're actually going to do the ands. So what's my probability of having a fatal crash on Monday and at 8 a.m.? So once you have the percentages, also called proportions, now you apply the formula for calculating the probability. So now, remember that in the first example, we had an OR, right? We had already existing numbers, and all we were trying to do was figure out a probability of getting that second number, of spinning, getting the second spin on that. Well, in this case, what we're trying to do is we're going to do an AND. So what we're trying to determine is kind of what they call a joint probability. That's called a joint probability, several variables. And we're going to use what they call the multiplication principle. So what is the multiplication principle? This is where you're going to take two probabilities, because if the narrative of the probability uses the word and, then you multiply both probabilities together to get your answer, not add them, like we did in the first example. So if you wanted to roll two dice and you get two sixes, the probability would be 1 over 6 times 1 over 6, or 1 in 36, since there's only a 1 in 6 chance of getting a 6 on one die. The same exists for this real-world application. So basically, here is the data that we had. All it is just literally a table of the data, just to make sure that you refresh your memory as to Monday and then 8 a.m. Monday, 8 a.m. So that's what we're doing, and that's where our final area is going to be. And you see how the National Transportation Safety Board just made it really nice for us to be able to use it in probabilities. So that's going to be it. So once we have these two numbers, 13.1 and 10.1, now all we need to do is literally what they call plug and chug. We just need to plug it into the formula, and then we need to make sure that we get a probability at the end. Now remember, probability is 0 to 1. The probability is 0 to 1. We're going to take each of the probabilities, each of the percentages, and we're going to multiply them together. Now remember, when we multiply them together, we're going to divide them by 100 first, because they're in percentages. So I want them in probability. That's how you do that. So P, the probability of A times the probability of B. So probability of A is going to be Monday times the probability of B, which is 8 a.m. So remember, you're going to take percentage divided by 100, and that's going to get an answer of 0.0132, or 1.32%. So very, very, very small. So the answer to your question of what is the chance, what are the odds, what is the probability of you having a fatal accident on Monday at 8 a.m. is you have about a 1.32% chance of getting into a fatal accident using the data provided. So this is what we're talking about here. And now there's a lot of variables you don't take into consideration. You don't take into consideration U.S. state, type of car, weather, visibility, but there are databases that can help you do that. So this is just another example that you can take a look at a real world situation and use those situations to be able to increase your knowledge of how probability can help you make a decision. The next lesson will go into another example and be able to show you an example having to do with the Transportation Security Agency, TSA, having to do with the Department of Homeland Security. So if you go to the next lesson, we'll give you another real world example of probability. Take care. Have a great day.